Today is all about solving problems on projects that we just finished up, which is never a fun thing to do, but it's part of the process when you're taking a vehicle and you're upgrading it. You got to have a good, strong foundation before you increase power even further, and that's exactly the situation that we're in with the second Gen Syclone. This is my 98 Chevy S10. It has a 5.3 swapped under the hood. It's a full-time all-wheel drive setup. And we just barely got this thing done, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, or we got phase one of the project done, I should say. And I've been driving it. I've just noticed a few somewhat important issues that we need to correct before we go to the next stage of the project, which is going to be adding boost. So the first one is, I don't want to say simple, but I'll outline it for you. We have a pretty nasty vibration coming from underneath the truck, and I believe it's the front drive shaft. So I need to get some measurements taken, and unfortunately there's really no adjustment you can do. Like on the rear, you can change pinion angle of the axle pretty easy, but up front here, you could either move the differential around in the chassis, which would require a ton of custom fabrication, which is doable, or we could raise and lower the rear, which is difficult because we have the cross member underneath and the floor up top, and clearance is very, very tight. I'm considering switching to a CV style front drive shaft, which I think could help eliminate some of the vibrations in the front drive shaft. But I want to get some angle measurements before we do that, and I'm going to try to find a different yoke for the front differential there, because that one is on the small side. And then if I'm going to rebuild or redo the drive shaft, I want to increase the yoke size there to make it even stronger, because this truck's going to be supercharged, it's going to be fast, and it's going to, the drive shaft is going to spin a lot of RPM. So I don't want any vibration. Second problem that we're actually going to start out the day with is a fuel delivery issue. Now, I think the fuel pressure on this fluctuates widely. And first thing that we're going to do is just install this fuel pressure gauge, just so we have an idea of what the fuel pressure situation is doing. But I haven't changed the pump. It has the original V6 pump in the tank right now, which I know isn't going to be close to big enough. So we have a much bigger fuel pump that we're going to install in the tank. But to make that work properly, we need a different regulator and fuel filter, because right now it has the, well, I'll show you, it has one of those Corvette style fuel filter regulator combos, which these I think are good to, they say up to like a 255 liter per hour pump, but we're going to be installing a pump that's bigger than that. So we need a proper bypass style regulator and a higher flowing filter. All right, so this is the gauge that we're putting on. It's glow shift. I have never actually used these. I know a lot of like the import and tuner guys use them. I thought it looked kind of cool, and it was a little bit more affordable than some of the other name brand gauges, but fuel pressure. And it should come with everything that we need to get it on. Get a sensor. I did have to pick this guy up separate. This just goes in line of a 6AN, but it has the port for the sensor. Kind of goes like that. So we'll start with that. We'll get the dirty part done on the fuel system, and we'll work on wiring. All right, James, what's a 6AN? That's 11/16, isn't it? I think. It depends. So we have AN lines run pretty much for the whole fuel system except for the very back. The fuel rail that I got for this Trailblazer SS intake, it doesn't have its own port, so that's why you saw me put the that little sensor into the adapter. So we're just going to space this guy out a little bit. Probably lose some fuel in the process. All right, hopefully we get enough room. It's gonna be tight. When I put the supercharger on, this will all have to be redone anyway, so I'm going to try to avoid my normal habit of making a ridiculously complicated solution. All right, we got the little fuel pressure sensor mounted in there. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to redo this plastic PCV line. I already went ahead and cut it, but I'm going to pop it off with this barb here and just going to use some silicone rubber. Again, this is kind of temporary, but still a pretty good long-term solution, like if I want to change this later. See, just like that. Then we can jam that guy on there. Put a little clamp on it, it's flexible, and it'll move out of the way. So to hold this all together, I'm going to use these, I think they're pronounced Oetiker. It's like a metal crimp clamp. I like them because they're semi-permanent, and they don't have a big screw head or anything ugly on there. So just give it a gentle squeeze. It's locked in place. There it goes. So we'll trim the hard line approximately there. What do you think, James? Should I go all the way up? No, I don't like that. I like it here.
Yeah.
That way it's clear of the fuel line, clear of the wire harness. It's a tight fit, but a better fit than before.
All be easy. Yeah.
So right in there. Don't want to smash the plastic, but we'll just give it a nice gentle clamp. All right, install the gauges wrapped up. I didn't even bother to show you guys the wiring because wiring is like the most boring thing to watch aside from paint drying. But anyway, there's 2 to 3 gauges I always install in pretty much any project that I do. Number one, a wideband lets me know what the engine's doing for an air fuel mixture, really aids in tuning. 2, fuel pressure, which we have just installed. And 3, usually we do a boost gauge, which this truck isn't boosted yet, so we only have 2 gauges. But the dashboard on this truck started to get a little bit full, but we're now going to go for a quick test drive because I have a hunch, and the reason why I installed the fuel pressure gauge is so I could solve that hunch, or confirm that hunch, I should say. I think with the regulator and pump that's in the truck right now, I think fuel pressure is fluctuating quite a bit, which is making my tuning life very miserable. Where with the regulator that we have in there, it should be set at like 58 PSI no matter what. It shouldn't move. There's no vacuum reference on the Corvette filter regulator. So we'll just go for a quick drive. We'll observe what it's doing, and then as soon as that satisfies my hunch, then we'll get to the rest of the install and get a proper regulator and a proper filter mounted underneath the truck. So you can see we're already a little bit off. This regulator is supposed to be 58 pounds. So we'll go for a quick drive, but I have a sneaking suspicion that that's not going to stay where it's supposed to be. Okay, so as we just observed, the fuel pressure drops under acceleration, which is not good. So that tells us, one, the fuel pump that we have is probably not big enough, which actually right there in the back seat I have the fix for that. But it also tells me the pressure being too high tells me that the regulator inside that little filter's maybe not doing exactly what it should. And the reason why this is a problem, if you can't maintain a consistent or a desired fuel pressure, your tuning is not going to be correct, because like let's say you tune it at 58 PSI, then the regulator bumps it up to 65, well then it's going to be a ridge. Or let's say the pressure drops unexpectedly, then you're going to be a little bit leaner. So you need consistent fuel pressure for tuning, and that's what we are going to get with our upgrades that we're about to install. So I'm glad we installed the pressure gauge, because like you're just shooting in the dark if you don't have data. Data is important. You got to measure stuff, fuel pressure included. right, guys, I've been wondering this whole time doing this engine swap project what the S10 actually weighs. My goal was to have it about 1,000 pounds lighter than UglyTruck, because this truck was meant to be faster and all that good stuff. If I remember right, I'll put it up on the screen, UglyTruck was like 4,900 or 5,000 pounds, somewhere right in that ballpark. I know UglyTruck's a little bit heavier, it's like 5,100. But we just got off the scales, and here we are, right, if it'll focus there, 3,980 pounds. So that works out perfect. We're about 1,000 pounds lighter than UglyTruck, and I want to make more horsepower than the UglyTruck did, which means this truck will be fast someday, soon. All right, so I'm waiting on one more fitting before I can redo the fuel pump and the filter and regulator combo. But I figured in the meantime, I'll at least get the fuel pump installed. So we're just gonna pull the bed off, and then they'll just give us easier access, and it's simpler than pulling the tank out. So that's loose. Up in the air we go. All right, so I've got all the wiring kind of undone, pretty simple. Now we just get a bunch of bolts to undo, and the bed is gonna come off. Okay. Just give us like maybe 2 feet bigger than the frame. Just watch those front bed slides. Try not to let too much weight on them. Okay. Good.
That's really cool. Wow.
I still think this needs to be bigger.
Yeah, maybe. I'll tell you, if it was any heavier though, it'd slow the truck down. Those are like quarter wall.
I used to catch a lot of I always built things, after being upside down, I always built things extra strong.
Yeah.
It added a few pounds, but I knew I was going to live through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I drove this thing through a snowstorm once or twice, which is fun, but it made an absolute mess underneath the truck. So in addition to making it easier to swap out the fuel pump, this also gives me a chance to clean the truck. And I just won't drive it in the snow anymore.
All right, so this is the pump that we're going to be putting in. It's a drop-in assembly. It's a 340 liter power pump. Now, this will be good for, I guess it depends on how much E85 we put in the tank, because remember, this is flex fuel. It'll be more than enough for the naturally aspirated version, and probably just barely enough for when we supercharge it. We may end up putting a bigger pump again later on when we really want to turn up the power. But for now, it's a drop-in module, and my fuel level sender actually isn't working, so this is a good way to upgrade that as well. Oh, there's all that pressure we talked about. I have a feeling that shouldn't be doing that. James, I think our regulator isn't regulating. To be fair, it did say caution, there's fuel inside. I just went to grab a hammer and a punch, but this actually uses a snap ring to hold the pump in, which is a very different design from what I'm used to. But it'll work all the same. Actually,
snap ring and then turn it?
Well, no, you just take the snap ring out, and the pump should lift out as well.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, that's nice.
that's nice.
Oh, yeah. A momentary lapse of brain function there. There we go. Empty, full. There we go. Lots more fuel delivery. Which one do we like better, James? Like that one on top?
Yeah, I like it.
Done. All right, now they do give you a different plug for this guy here because that's a little different. That one plugs in, but I'm not going to wire this in just yet because I actually have at the house, which I forgot to bring in, one of those hot wire kits, which puts a much heavier gauge wire in. So for now, I'm going to move on to the regulator and filter, and I'll swap that connector over in a minute. So I got most of the little odds and ends knocked out, and we're pretty much ready to start reassembling our new and improved filter / regulator combination that we're putting together. So here's what we got. If you remember, this is all the fuel filters, and we have it attached directly to our regulator. And this is the fitting that I was waiting for. This is from Racetronics. It's a double-sided ORB swivel, so it goes from -10 down to -6. The filter is going to be mounted to the frame with a cushion clamp. I'll show you that in a second. Parker supplies those with the kits, which, by the way, I'll put a link below for all the fuel, but that's his website. And then, so we have an inlet here from the tank. We have the return back to the tank, and the regulated pressure is going to go on its way up into the engine. This is the little bracket that I made for the front here. This is like a bulkhead style fitting, so that's going to go on there, and this little nut is going to go on like so, and that'll be our front attachment point. And all of these will be attached to the frame with a M6 nut cert. Regulator, yeah, probably long term we will move it up to the engine bay when we get on to like phase 2 or 3 of this project. I'll do that at the same time that we upgrade to like -8 feed and return lines for the high power supercharged version of this project, but for now, the naturally aspirated phase, we won't have any problems with a regulator mounted halfway up on the frame rail. Speaking of frame rail, we have the old filter regulator combo removed. We are able to reuse this line here, which goes up to our Summit High Flow Flex Fuel mounting block. And then these are the original hard lines. I showed you this forever ago. I just flared them and I installed a inverted flare coupler on those. And so this is where the filter combo is going to mount. I already have these 2 M6 nut certs installed. That's going to be for the clamp that Parker sent along with the filter, and there's a back piece to it. I don't have that right here. And up here, you probably remember there was a mount hole for the old fuel filter, and there was a couple holes up here, which I just thought were a little bit unnecessary. So we grabbed the Binford Hole Eraser 9200, and we filled those guys in, and we basically have a blank slate where we can put our front nut cert, because it was kind of close to where the other one was going to be, and I didn't want to have 2 holes side by side. And I left this one just because there's a few other factory holes like that in the frame. We have one immediately across from it. You know, there's some back here, so I figured I'd leave that, but the other couple little holes we got rid of. That one, I can't remember what I had mounted there. We may get rid of that one eventually. But anyway, so we just got to drill one more hole, get our filter combo mounted, build a couple of AN lines, and then we should be able to get this thing fired up. What's up, James?
Can I use the CRV?
Now, I know that using these threaded inserts adds a lot of time to a project, because you can just, run a self-tapper into the frame rail. But I told myself on this project, I'm not going to use a single self-tapping sheet metal screw, and so far we've been able to uphold that standard. So I'm really happy. Yeah, adjustment is going to be a little bit tricky here, but this is going to be like a set it once and forget it. So once I get the adjustment screw locked down, we won't have to access that any longer. Now, for the fuel line, we can't use just anything because we are going to be running ethanol fuel. Ethanol is very corrosive. So this is the Summit Racing PTFE-6 rated hose. Same stuff I used on the rest of the fuel system. It's got the stainless steel braided outer and a Teflon inner liner, making it, good for fuel especially, but it also will work good for, I have it on the transmission cooler lines. You can use it on a lot of stuff. So, good hose, check it out, and I happen to have enough fittings left over to do what I need. And basically what you're doing here is when you insert the hose end, you have to expand that Teflon liner, and it kind of conforms to the inside of the olive or the ferrule there. Now they make a special tool for that, which is just like a round little tapered thing, which I've been meaning to buy one, I just haven't done it yet. You can assemble it without that tool, but it's just a pain in the butt. And often you get jammed in the fingernail by these stainless braided wires. There you go, that's one PTFE hose end. And just like that, we have our fuel system upgrades pretty much wrapped up. We get a 340 liter per hour pump, which should, I forget off the top of my head what horsepower that will support, but I will put it here on the screen. And we've used up kind of every square inch of space that we have underneath the frame rail. We've got all the fuels filter, we've got our regulator. I'll probably use this gauge just to set the pressure, then I'll unscrew that and put an 1/8 inch NPT bung in there, just because we have a gauge up top. Also, obviously, I can't see that when I'm driving. We have our PTFE return and feed lines done back to our existing hard lines. So yeah, that's kind of it. Unfortunately, I didn't get to even measure the pinion angles on the front drive shaft. This has been a weird week. Like I feel like I have been so unproductive. But next week's a brand new week, and we'll start over from scratch, and we'll hit it and we'll make more progress. So thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. Come back soon.